Hi everyone, I want to talk about some interesting feature of the follower update that we're going to see in Season 23. So you most likely have seen that now we have the big followers with 14 items that you can equip, and you can give them Sage set and Cane set and Nemesis Bracer, Flavor, Gloss of Worship, all the good stuff here that makes especially T16 farming very comfortable, very easy for everyone. So now the thing is that in the future, we're not going to be able to bring your follower into groups unless you wear a share set, which is only a thing for very specific support setups in the future. And what this means is you need to have a T16 setup for both solo and groups. And this is probably something that most people might not be aware of right now. So you need to have a different setup saved in your armory and you need to swap every time someone joins your party or you go to join someone. And it's gonna be quite messy actually. So this is probably the first time in Diablo 3, not counting a brief period during vanilla when the game was released, where farming in solo might actually be more efficient for many people than farming in groups. Most T16 builds that are not LOD or LON can easily include Sage set most of the time, unless you're on the very low end and you're just starting out your character, you're like Paragon 300, you have no damage. Yeah, you probably skip Sage set and maybe go Crimson or take some other good opportunities. But for the most part, including Sage is very easy. But including Cane set for the extra keys, which is probably even more important than the Sage set, is not so easy. So there is a few builds that can have Canes. Typically, these are the sets that have non-standard set pieces, something like Tarasha with the offhand, or Firebirds with offhand, or Natalia that has the weapon and the ring. And in those builds, you can make Canes work and actually still deal okay damage. So there are some setups that work especially well. For example, Natalia God combo, where you can just swap out the God sets for the Canes at the end. I've been farming with this a long time in Season 21. That was very nice. But for the most part, either most people won't do it or they don't play a build that can do that. Now, what's going to happen in Season 23 is that, well, everyone is going to get very accustomed and very comfortable with their big new follower that gives them all that and more and makes T16 farming a breeze. And they're not going to want to play with others anymore in T16, which on the one hand is not the worst thing because, well, T16 is kind of the one place in Diablo 3 right now that you can farm with pretty decent efficiency compared to groups, because GRs in groups is much more efficient. You get like triple or quadruple the amount of XP. You can push much higher, much more easily. And also bounties in groups is around 3 times faster than in solo. But in T16, all of that doesn't really apply. T16 does not really get a lot faster when you're in group. And now, especially when you invite only one person to your group, you will most likely go down in efficiency when you don't have the Sage and the Canes. Not only that, but for most speed farming setups especially, you will want to use the Enchanters as your follower. And right now, there is no way to save your follower loadout for certain activities. So you might be able to save your build and then change it to a speed GR version, to a push version, to a T16 version. So if you take a look at this here, for example, LOD Wave of Light, we have here the T16 Enchanters. It's going to look like this with all the stuff that I've already shown you, Sage, Canes, etc. And then you have the Speed GR version where you might want to stack maybe just the 2-piece Canes here for the XP. You might want to swap out some items. You want to get a Hellfiring in there. You want to get the Lyrics Crown with the Ruby, for example. And perhaps you want to put on Thunder Fury. You want to stack more attack speed. So there is certain variations for sure. And then there's also going to be other push setups that use the Enchanters quite frequently for the extra cooldown you get now from her skill, or just the defensive capabilities, the slows. Enchanters is a very good follower in the future, especially for speed farming, but also for pushing. I have included Enchanters in a lot of setups. I don't know exactly, but probably like half of these here have the Enchanters in their solo pushing setup instead of just the farming. I think realistically, most people will probably forget about Enchantress, even though she's the best for T16 farming, and just gear out something like a Scoundrel or a Templar and not really care about the benefits of the Enchantress and just swap the follower whenever we go to a different activity. That is probably the way to go for most people. Another thing is the Nemesis braces, which is quite important. So in group, you will have to wear Nemesis braces again yourself. So I always swapped out the bracers, or maybe the cube item for Nemesis bracers on these builds here. And in solo, usually you can take a lot more damage. For example, here Captain Crimson, which gives you straight up like 70% more DPS. So for some builds that are rather weak, this might be quite a big issue to be useful or like be able to one-shot stuff on T16 difficulty. Also, when you're farming T16 in groups now, you basically have to decide on someone to kind of sacrifice their Kane's bonus keys to kill the boss for you. And that person basically always has to be there to actually kill the boss, unless you kind of say, okay, sometimes I'll just kill it myself, even though I'm supposed to be the leecher. So it's going to be a quite curious situation, I imagine. And a lot of people will probably miss their follower when they go into groups. And I would actually imagine that for season 24 and onwards, we're going to see another update to the followers that in some way allows you to get those bonuses in groups too. Well, personally, I don't really think that's such a great idea, because the gap between group and solo is still very large, and buffing solo players is definitely a good idea. I think that just the quality of life of not having to worry about this stuff and kind of just everyone, doing whatever they want in T16 is probably outweighing that. It's much more important to actually buff solo players in GRs than in T16, I believe. The good part is that when you farm a lot of T16 with Sage set equipped pretty much all the time, you don't really have to worry so much about Sage, at least. And then it's just a Kane swap, and you have to decide on someone to kill the boss, okay? When you farm long enough with Sage set equipped, you're gonna have way more Death Breath than you can spend. And especially if you don't farm a lot of bounties, which actually I have done because I have barely any Forgotten Souls, as you can see, you will not have enough of the white, blue and yellow materials to actually get rid of your Death Breath. So at least that is an advantage, but especially LD builds will probably feel quite sad when you play them in groups. On the other hand, the best T16 build in the game, which is LOD Wave of Light Monk, actually becomes the nuttiest speed farmer ever now. So not only do you get all the benefits from the followers, you also get easy access to Nemesis. You have easy protection for your squirts now, because you can get something like St. Argus here instead of Nemesis. And you have Nagelring on top of all this, which gives you 5% extra magic find at level 70. So not only is it the fastest build, but there are actually some setups where I included this ring for the extra magic find, because, well, 5% more legendaries, why not? And this is gonna be ridiculous. I'm gonna make a full guide for this build specifically, especially for T16 farming, simply because of how nutty this is gonna be. And I actually imagine a lot of people playing T16 solo with a monk just because it's so insane in the future. In either case, this is just something I wanted to highlight and that I wanted to draw some attention to. So be aware, you need to have a T16 solo and a T16 group setup. And you want to kind of be a bit careful, I guess, about when to invite people to your group. And you want to make sure that at least most of the party members can swap to Canes if you care about key efficiency, which, well, is kind of the main reason to farm T16 to begin with. And then we'll see what Blizzard has in store for the future. I would imagine that there will probably be more updates to the followers. There will be some other updates to the game in general. And, well, maybe this is just the way to go for now. Maybe this is actually one of the kind of perks of solo play now, and having those is actually not too bad. But considering the history of the game, where you were forced into group play pretty much all the time if you wanted the best efficiency, that is a very interesting development. Personally, I would actually like to see much more buffs to the followers, so maybe a stronger emanate system, more choices for all those slots, especially those slots that don't really have any choices, like helms, shoulders, gloves, chests, belt, pants. Yeah, you get the idea. And actually having like more of those small effects that kind of like, give you some utility, give you a little bit of customization for your build. I would really like to have a lot more options there. Maybe specifically legendaries made for this emanate system, because they are too weak to put on your own character, but they give you like a nice little bonus on your follower that will emanate to you. I think this would be really great to, first of all, buff solo play a bit more, especially for GR farming, GR pushing. Solo play is still way behind groups, and the efficiency gap is very large, so at least double, triple the XP. So this means you can easily buff solo play by, let's say, 10 tiers or something like that. And right now the followers, just having them versus not having them, gives you at max maybe 5 tiers to begin with. So they can add a lot of stuff there, and still be on the safe side that people would prefer groups over solo without really pushing the solo play as the optimal choice. Theoretically, you could also include some of the really strong items in the emanate system, something like Ingeum, something like Convention or Rogue. I think that this is kind of a bad idea. If they want to buff followers, I would rather have more like small little choices for the items and then have much stronger follower abilities. So when we look at this here, we have the Enchanters with the 6% attack speeds and erosion for 10% additive damage and all these kind of things, 10% cooldown. So why not buff the shit out of this and just give it like 30% attack speed here, and then like a 50% additive bonus there, and then kind of cooldown, it could be quite ridiculous, but let's say 20 or 25%, and then you have something like a 30 or 40% elemental bonus to choose from here, and kind of like similar abilities for the other followers. And that could be quite interesting then, to kind of like choose, one follower that gives you like a really large buff to your crit chance, the other one to your attack speed, maybe the other, like the Templar, gives you a lot of resources with the Inspire, and they all have like this big additive damage buff that they can apply, and maybe give them even more abilities. So why not have like a 5th row or a 6th row with even more buffs to you and even more utility and other effects that really help you out as a solo player. So this is what I wanted to share here. I'm quite curious to hear your thoughts as well for how you think about this and what you think could happen or should happen in the future. And otherwise, hope you liked my video here. See you guys next time.